America will spend over $3 trillion for this war that was based on lies. And even today, we find our government will not bring the troops home as promised, but instead will continue to spend billions on this stupid and corrupt war in Iraq while our own nation is falling apart. Money for war, but no money for jobs? Now, am I advocating isolationism? Certainly not. We need to strengthen the United Nations' peacekeeping ability and blunt NATO's war-making capability. We must stop NATO from going rogue. We need a counterterrorism strategy which brings people to justice, not which dispenses justice from 10,000 feet with the help of predator drones. It is the predatory interventionism which must stop. We must stop intervening for the benefit of oil companies or other corrupt corporate interests. We cannot be the policemen of the world and lay off police and firemen in our own nation. We cannot continue to bomb bridges in other countries and say that we do not have the money to build bridges in America. We must stop pretending that America can solve all the problems in the world when we can't solve our own problems here at home. How can we democracy to other nations when we are losing it here at home? We cannot tell other people how to live when we have people here at home having trouble or difficulty living. We should look to the wisdom of the book of Proverbs, where it was written, and I quote, "He who troubleth his own house shall inherit the wind." He who troubleth his own house shall inherit the wind. And we must work to set our own house in order. Mr. Speaker, there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, but there are weapons of mass destruction here in America. Unemployment is a weapon of mass destruction. Poverty is a weapon of mass destruction. Homelessness, a weapon of mass destruction. Inadequate education, a weapon of mass destruction. Lost pension benefits, weapons of mass destruction. Poor health care is a weapon of mass destruction. Yet despite the obvious needs domestically, the Pentagon budget now consumes over 50% of our discretionary spending. And the Pentagon budget has grown alongside the war budget. Just this year, the wars in the Pentagon budget will consume close to $1 trillion of taxpayers' money. $1 trillion. Do you have any idea how many jobs $1 trillion can create? Stop the wars. Trim the bloated Pentagon budget. Use the savings to put America back to work. The American people want work, not warfare. Can we see any clear example of the danger of endless war? We are supposed to be impressed with the strength of our leaders who, in the name of America, wield awesome weapons against states a fraction of our size. Well, when it comes to the economy and jobs, the same leaders lack the ability to confront Wall Street, which is destroying jobs on Main Street. While spending trillions for unnecessary wars, the government bailed out the banks for $700 billion, refusing to link the bailout to mortgage modification, which would have helped millions of Americans stay in their homes. The Fed, which infamously looked the other way as the financial crisis was building and failed to properly monitor the overexposure of top banks, created $1.2 trillion out of nothing and gave secret emergency loans to some of the largest banks who helped to cause the financial collapse through reckless investments. This secret money created out of nothing, but backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S., is going to fuel an international financial system which siphons wealth out of the U.S., avoids paying taxes, takes American jobs, and moves them to low-wage climates. According to Bloomberg News, The 1.2 trillion peak on December 5th, 2008, was almost 3 times the size of the federal budget deficit that year and approximates the amount of money, 1.27 trillion, that is due in unpaid principal on 6.5 million homes that are in or facing foreclosure. Secret loans went to Morgan Stanley for $107 billion, Citigroup $99.5 billion, Bank of America $91.4 billion, Goldman Sachs $69 billion, and to foreign borrowers including the Bank of Scotland $84.5 billion and a Zurich-based UBS AG $77.2 billion. How is it possible that banks too big to fail still exist? We all know these banks will fail again. The taxpayers will be asked to bail them out again to preserve the wealth of shareholders, bondholders, and executives again. The destruction of the middle class has been accelerated by the Wall Street manipulators, brought about the collapse of the housing market, destroyed trillions of wealth built into American homes. Risk, like taxes, is a yoke unfairly placed upon the shoulders of the middle class. As income and resulting wealth is being redistributed upward at a pace not seen since the 1920s, the purchasing power of the middle class has been seriously eroded. Americans have less equity in homes to fuel home equity loans to keep their consumer spending up. 1/3 of all Americans owe more than their home is worth. How is it possible that 120 million Americans literally have no wealth, just debt? How is it possible that 150 million Americans have less wealth than the top 400 individuals? How did it come to pass that the top 13,400 households, according to David K. Johnson, have more yearly income than the bottom 96 million Americans? Who created this economy where welfare for the wealthy creates a system where a person earning $4 billion a year managing a hedge fund pays a lower tax rate on most of his income than a person who drives a truck? In a report just released, the Pew Charitable Trust wrote, the idea that children will grow up to be better off than their parents is a central component of the American dream and sustains American optimism. However, a middle-class upbringing does not guarantee the same status over the course of a lifetime. 1/3 of Americans raised in a middle class fall out of the middle as adults, unquote. The implications of the Pew Charitable Trust report are chilling. America's middle class is being destroyed. America is headed towards a two-class society. Just as America could not survive half free and half slave, so America cannot survive half rich and half poor. What happens to a dream deferred? Wrote Langston Hughes. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore, then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags with a heavy load. Or does it explode? It is democracy itself which is at risk here. An economic democracy is a precondition of a political democracy. With endless wars, without solid jobs to sustain a middle class, a new national security state armed with the Patriot Act will exist primarily to provide surveillance of a growing, bristling poverty class. America knew this 40 years ago, 44 years ago, when on February 29th, 1968, the report of the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, also known as the Kerner Report, pronounced, quote, America is moving towards two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal, unquote. Then the equalities were